Hello, welcome back to AG Engineering. In the last episode we completed that crankshaft that had got the modification for the ball and roller bearing on the timing side. These are the crankcases off the same engine. As you can see there, we've got the case machined out and the remains of the NKIB bearing fitted in there. The outer ball race part and the outer race of this bearing are missing from this engine, so what we're going to have to do is fit a new one of those. I'll get these crankcases separated and then we'll take a look. Just out of interest to everybody, we're currently filming on a new Panasonic handheld video camera that I've got, and we'll see how this turns out for the YouTube videos. Previous stuff's been done on a combination of the Nikon still camera and the GoPro Hero 3, so this is another tool in the arsenal, so to speak. I'll get set up and we'll get this case split apart and we'll see what we've got. And there we have the inside of the said cases. Again, we're back to the Panasonic camera on this one, which has got brilliant image stabilisation, I must say. So this here bearing is going to be coming out, and we'll be fitting a new one. I do note that there is a slight gap there between where the bearing ends and the case. Before I take it out, I'll just measure a depth either from here to here or from the other side to make sure we put the new one back in the right place. And there we are on the other side. If we zoom in a little, we can see that there is definitely a step there between the case and the bearing. We'll just measure that. I don't know if I can capture that, but that thread inside there is a plug blanking off the normal feed to the crankshaft. So we haven't got to worry too much about the bearing position in this instance. They've put a hollow plug down there, or a threaded plug down from the down from that way, I believe. Can't get any light into there for us. Just about. So I'll clean our passageways I'll clean our passageways out and then get that new bearing in. I've just got to ream the cam bushes first though. And just for those curious with this, that is our normal crank feed down through there and out into the bush area here. In this case it's been blanked off down to the bottom there with a grub screw, them threads I showed earlier, and there's a tube been fitted down here that's coming through to this hole here, which feeds up into the timing cover, which has got a piece inserted into it to direct the flow up and into the end of the crankshaft down there. And there's no extra bulges on the outside of the timing cover. I haven't got the timing cover here at the moment. We'll try and get a bit of that later on. So there's our end feed system up through there. The oil pressure relief valve, that channel in there No, it doesn't actually. I don't know how the oil pressure relief valve's going. I'll have another study at it, because normally it would go round there and into the oil pressure relief valve hole at the back there. But this is obviously blanked off when the bearing's inserted. So we'll just check that out, how the oil pressure relief's working, or indeed if there's anything in it. So there's our oil pressure relief valve out, and there is, you can see that moving in the bottom of that hole there. There's our oil passage through from oil's fed into that end, down into the end of the crank, then relieves that way into the filter screen stroke oil pressure relief valve, and then normally it would come out of that hole there, but as you can see from the witness marks, the groove in the back of the bearing, if we go and get the bearing, there is our bearing. That groove there, if the oil were to get into that, it would get out, oil pressure would get into that groove, it would get out through the bearing that way, and you'd lose all your oil pressure because you're running it through a needle roller bearing. So you can't allow it to get into that groove. So this bearing flat surface here is sitting right where that hole is. There's a witness mark of where the bearing normal oil groove would be, and there's a flat bit again. How's it relieving oil pressure? Don't know. I'll go that way. Curious. Any thoughts, anybody? What's going on here? I don't think we've got oil pressure relief, to be honest with you. Okay, there's a different view of it. Now, if we look along there, that's just machined flat. Now, I'm sure that when I looked at BSA Bill's website, he puts a groove along there that's then sealed by the bearing that allows you to have the oil pressure relief going on. I don't know what they've done with this one. I need to check whether or not there's some other way of having oil pressure regulation, unless there's something built into the pump or it's some kind of fancy pump. I'll have a chat with the guy whose engine with this is in a little while and see. Because to me it looks like we really need to put a relief groove along there. Yeah, has it even been run? I don't know. I don't know the history of it. So curious one. And just for reference purposes here, there's a normal BSA bush that's obviously going in that way, and this groove here with its oil holes feed both into the crankshaft on its groove on the crank. We'll get to one of them in a minute, the crank I've got over on the bench, and feed oil from that hole into the back of this groove, into the crank, and through into the oil pressure relief valve as well. Not in this case. And there's our normal crankshaft end that that this bush goes onto on a standard crank. And again, there is our crank machined right down on this engine for the needle roller bearing. And there's our tube out the crankshaft. Definitely needed covered in debris there. So to get that out, we take that centre bolt out there, and obviously that plug we machined out earlier. So to do this reaming, we've got the case set up on the mill table like that, and in a moment I'll bolt the other case to it and pass the reamer through. I'll show you that in a bit. There we have our two reamers. One's 3/4 and one is 19mm. The one I'm going to use on this job is the 19mm one, but they're sort of extra long series Morse taper 3 reamers specifically for this work. So what we've done there to set this up, I've put that roughly into the case, the reamer and the sleeve adapter roughly into the case. Then I've slackened this bolt off here a little bit, got everything underneath and lined it up so that we're concentric to everything. The mill hasn't got enough height in it to actually drop the table down enough to get this in whilst the cases are bolted to the table. Hence we have to do it that way, but it's in, it's tapped up ever so slightly. So what we'll do now is I'll run the mill slowly, just make sure everything's in line, get a little bit of lube on it, there, then hopefully start that. I'm just watching for any sort of rocking about of the, see that's let go now. Right, give me a second, come back to you. And just one for those concerned whether it's square to the table, yes, it has been checked. There's a square sitting on the table. If we zoom you in, there is no light showing on that square registering on the barrel face. So yeah, we're parallel and vertical. I'm just trying to get it to grip enough to drive. And that's it. So hopefully my arm's not going in the way. Now we're just cutting at the bottom there, ever so slightly. I'm just going to bring the table up a little bit. Oop, dropped again. Not easy this. And we just throw it to the back there and give it a couple of rubs, a couple of goes. Just bring that up again. Now what this usually won't do is realign. Now I've lost it again. Is realign a misaligned hole. For that I've got a boring bar set up actually. So we'll try this for now. Now it's had a few turns. See if the cam revolves. If not, we'll set the boring bar up in this one. Now the reamer's out of the way, I will unbolt the cases. Now the reamer's out of the way, I'll unbolt the cases. And we'll try the camshaft in it in a moment. With the cases bolted back together again after that reaming, I still can't turn that camshaft freely. So, as I say, sometimes the reamer just deflects in the hole, and although you get the right size holes in the bushes at each end, they're still not in line. So the next option is to run a boring bar from this side where our two bushes are through to the back bush to line everything up. I've got a boring bar I made quite a while ago. If we go down to this here, this has got a little bit of HSS cutting steel on the end of it there, just in at a sort of 45-degree angle. It's some 19mm bar turned down at each end. You can see that. So that end goes into the collet chuck, and it's set up just with, sorry I'm drifting with the camera, just with the tip there just touching the mill table and not lifting the cutter up, so we know that this will take this out to the diameter of this. This will take this out to the diameter of this bar here. So we'll set that up in the mill now and see what we can do with that one. One thing I have noticed with these cases that nobody mentioned, they're actually odd halves. That could explain some of our problems. Just out of curiosity there, with that together not turning, with it apart, that cam is quite notchy in that bottom bush. So I think taking a little bit out of that with the boring bar should help us. There's no play in that at all. It's a good fit, but you want a little bit of running clearance in it. So we'll see what happens with the boring bar. Well, there's the cases back together again. I've put a little bit of oil on the boring bar there, and we'll drop that in to there. You see that's just a nice sliding fit in that. And then when we get to the bottom, yeah, it's stopped by the cutting tool. So I'll put the chuck back in here, set this up under the mill table centrally, and then we'll bore that bottom bush, and then we'll probably go through again with the reamer just to be sure. Right, we'll start our mill and bring the speed up steadily. I'll put it on to hand wheel control. And we'll take that down on this side of it. and as you can hear, we're just touching on one side. Just take the speed up a little bit. And I'm just hand feeding that. I am working on the power feed, down feed for this, but not completed yet. And that then bores our back bush in line with our timing side bushes. And we'll just keep going until we hear the cutting stop. Bring you back in a moment when we've got the cam back in. There we have the cases back together and bolted up, and there's our camshaft, nice and free. So that's the next stage done. What I will look at now is putting the bearing in to this side, and then a try run on crank assembly and see where we land up. And now when we drop our boring bar through, we're not resting on the back bush anywhere all the way around there. So hopefully a camshaft should be right. I'll just run the reamer through it, just as a final little sort of burnishing exercise, and then we'll try the cam in it.